on this computer. So Carolina, thank you so much for coming today. Sorry that Miriam's not feeling well. Carolina is the co-executive director of Just San Bernardino, and she and I met some time ago, and their program just really impressed me with all the things they're doing. And Carolina, I will let you explain it in more detail from there.
Thank you, David. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. So good morning or good afternoon, sorry. Carolina with Just San Bernardino. We are a collaborative of nonprofits in the area of San Bernardino who are working to create what we call a people's inclusive plan for the economy. This all started in 2019 when we got funded to create a survey that specifically addressed issues that the residents wanted to see in the economy moving forward. So we designed this survey about housing and arts and education, infrastructure, questions related to job quality, and really just anything that had to do with how the community was going to engage economically. Um, I guess I'll start with some background as well. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the area of San Bernardino or maybe the county, but not the city itself. The city itself used to be home to the Norton Air Force Base and Kaiser Steel, which were some really prominent industries that really grew the middle class in San Bernardino. And when those two places closed down, it actually,
No,
oh, sorry, there a question? Oh, I think it was just a mute issue.
I was just yelling at my wife. Sorry about that. I'll mute myself.
No worries. So when those two bases closed down, it was a really big hit to the middle class. And so following that, there was also the demolition and closure of the Carousel Mall, which was also a central hub for economic activity for residents in San Bernardino. Another really important kind of piece in this timeline is that the city also underwent a bankruptcy early 2011, I believe, or 2010, and they have not really ever financially recovered from that. Also coupled with a lot of corruption coming from some folks in the city council, but also the mayor who was let go and is being sued for sexual misconduct. So all of these issues really just piled up and kind of created this area of, it's still a very major city in Southern California, and it has surrounding very vibrant economic markets like Redlands or Rancho Cucamonga. But San Bernardino itself has never really recovered from that. And so as we see a lot of industries coming in like Amazon, who are really taking these warehouses and kind of just putting them all over the city, taking the Norton Air Force Base and actually repurposing that for air packaging and air travel. We've seen these communities really be taken advantage of, and all of these jobs that were, supporting middle class previously at the Air Force Base were replaced with low wage jobs, low quality jobs from Amazon. So as it stands, really two of the big sectors in this area are still going to be logistics, but also education. Then we also have Cal State San Bernardino. We also have San Bernardino Valley College, who provide, school and education, community classes. We also have KVCR, which is on the campus of San Bernardino Valley Community College as well, who does like media. So there's still these pockets and areas where there's still other ways that we can diversify the economy. But this is all kind of like higher level economic tools. What we really wanted to know is, what do the residents see? So when we surveyed 4,000 residents, we heard things like infrastructure, like I just want the light on the corner of my street to work, or I just want the sidewalks to be safe, or I just want to go to the park, or I want access to better jobs, jobs that I can get benefits at, or jobs that will, pay me a pension, or jobs that I can have health insurance at. So really, we were hearing things that um, covered a wide variety of issues. And so we took all of those survey responses and categorized them into chapters having to do with like art, like I said, labor quality, like job quality, warehousing and things like that. And all of those chapters made up the book of the People's Plan for Economic Inclusion. How we work currently, we were able to receive, like I said, a grant to do the survey. But then we had an additional, 2 years of funding to be able to interpret the data and results and begin with the publication of the actual book and survey. So in those 2 years, we wrote the book, we went back and also did community profiles on certain individuals who gave us some responses, where we really just went in depth on their story, whether that was relating to one of the chapters or just their own personal story. And those are included in between each of the chapters of the book. So we were able to do that and also provide a people's dictionary, which really broke down in certain terms some of the things that we're talking about in the book, right? Because what does it mean when you say economic inclusion? Like, what does infrastructure mean? Like, these things that were kind of um, they would make sense if you're an economic developer, if you work in the city, right? But what we wanted to do is explain what folks are saying, and break down those terms. So we also did employ local artists to write or to draw pictures in relation to what the definition meant to them. And that really helped break down some of these terms. So when we gave the booklet with all the survey responses and all the chapters, we were able to also give this supplemental piece so that people could really break down and get the full understanding of what we're trying to change, right? Because when you just say like we're trying to build a people's inclusive economy, a lot of people have questions about what that means. So as we're currently working now, we're able to be on another 3-year grant to implement the People's Plan. Right now, we're very, lucky to be fiscally sponsored and still have the funding through the next 3 years. So we work with the Community Foundation, which is the Inland Empire Community Foundation. They're the only community foundation in the Inland Empire. But, they have been there since the beginning of the project as well. And like I said, all of these findings are published in the People's Plan for Economic Inclusion, which would be on our website. And some of our partner organizations include Arts Connection. So Arts Connection is actually going to be county-wide. So like I said, although we are focused on the city of San Bernardino, a lot of the organizations that we work with have been having a presence in the county. But the project here is specifically focused in the city of San Bernardino. So Arts Connection does arts programming all around San Bernardino County, which is kind of a big undertaking, but they're based in San Bernardino. So that's very helpful for us when it comes to, you know, uh, having these meetings, convenings, leaning on them, even going into the office for one-on-ones. It's been very helpful to have each of our organizations either be based or have an office very near, like very nearby the city of San Bernardino. And Arts Connection has also really taken an interest into arts entrepreneurship as well. So that's and arts education. So they do work with teachers in the San Bernardino's Unified School District as well. Blue Educational Foundation is also kind of more of a regional organization, but they do have work in San Bernardino. Their main focus previously was in Rialto. So a lot of work was done in Rialto, which is again neighboring to San Bernardino, but they're more focused on quality of education and educational pathways, which might be called career technical education. So having these technical education pathways actually be lined up to a fulfilling career, and having each school have an equitable choice of which pathways are at which school. Because as it currently stands, these pathways are really about who the principal or teachers at a certain school know that they can get that they can reach out to somebody who can develop a pathway at the school. It's not equitable. The health and professional kind of career pathways are really reliant on like who they know, instead of having it be based off of like everyone who goes to a different school has an equal chance to take that pathway. So you would have to move schools to take a different pathway. Congregations organized for prophetic engagement. They are a faith-based organization, again, based in San Bernardino, and they do a lot of civic engagement as well as leadership development in the community. So it's been very helpful to have these different kinds of organizations that have a kind of wide variety of bases, because what we are trying to do is inform each other's bases and cross-pollinate them on different issues in the People's Plan. So, for example, COPE also does a lot of work with re-entering populations, and so that ties into the work development and the labor quality of things, and so how these folks are getting connected to jobs that actually have a future and benefits. And then we have the local labor council, the Inland Empire Labor Council. They are, again, because they are the labor council of the Inland Empire, they're very regional. But their base is going to be in Colton, which is again neighboring to San Bernardino. But they do work in San Bernardino as well. But because of the nature of the labor council, they do have to, they have unions all over the IE. And they've been really leading the charge on the good jobs fight, having all the jobs that are created in San Bernardino, they are there to really, advocate for them being good jobs, especially around the redevelopment of the Carousel Mall, where we could potentially have project labor agreements, but also whatever ends up being built there, whatever stores or whatever businesses they're attracting, they're really there to advocate for them to be good jobs. Then we have Inland Congregations United for Change, which is also another faith-based organization. But they also do work with students in the San Bernardino Unified School District as well. Again, a lot of civic and voter engagement as well, and parent engagement. So their basis can be similar to COPE, but they have a strong emphasis on being into the schools, which again ties into us and our advocacy around having those career technical educational programs be purposeful and fulfilling. We have People's Collective for Environmental Justice, PSAGE, fairly new, um, fairly new organization, but they also do a lot of base building and community work, community leaders development work as well. And they're really interested in getting into the infrastructure conversation, because that is kind of where you see a lot of the environmental racism really be baked into that infrastructure policy. So that's why they're supporting that. We have Time for Change Foundation as well. And they do a lot of worker development as well. They do a lot of entrepreneurship training with women who are, again, re-entering from the system, as well as like affordable housing development for those women. And Warehouse Worker Resource Center, like the Inland Empire Labor Council, also focuses on worker rights. However, due to legal status or some of the jobs that they have, they won't be able to form a union. And so we have WWRC to kind of fill in that gap and also be hyper focused on the warehouses. And I'll just quickly go through our priorities. So like I said, community benefits agreements in all over San Bernardino, but specifically in the Carousel Mall. Land acquisition, because we are full of vacant lots and we know that folks are moving eastward towards us. And so that's a way to keep it in the community. And that is kind of tying into housing and keeping things affordable. And purposeful pathways, like I said, purposeful career educational pathways that lead to a career.
Carolina, you went on mute. I don't know if that was intentional or accidental. So,
Oh yeah, I was just trying to wrap it up.
oh, okay. Is that it for the presentation portion or?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, great. Well, thank you again. Everything you guys do is so impressive with the graphics and
Mhm.
illustration. I'd love to open it up for people. Hopefully, everybody gets a chance to ask a question. So, asking people to just have one question, not a four-part question or multiple questions. And for those who've come before and know that I'm very happy to try and steer the conversation a little bit. We are going to end right on time today, too. So just want to be mindful of that. And if you're going to ask a question, it would be great if you came on camera to ask it as well. So, and Carolina, yeah, great. Thank you. Is there any questions? I have hundreds of them for Carolina, but I want to make sure everybody in the community gets a chance first. Elizabeth, go for it.
Uh, Thank you so much, Carolina. This was wonderful. I work at Cal State San Bernardino, and I'm just wondering what kind of support can the residents and the organizations in San Bernardino give to help lift up the work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we've been really lucky to be partnering with a lot of folks in the community. I think what's been really helpful is Miriam, who's not here today, is a resident of San Bernardino and has been for many, many years. So she brings a lot of connections from Cal State San Bernardino, to her previous job sites, to her neighbors, like councilwomen, council members. Being really well connected has really helped us tap into a lot of folks who are really on the ground in different spaces. I think also some of the work that we've done, trying to be into more regional and statewide efforts surrounding economic inclusion has really built bridges for us as well. But I would say like if we have events and things like that, like coming out and speaking to us, we are planning really this year to activate bases and tap into community leaders that have been either trained up by COPE or PSAGE, or ICUC to really start engaging with that, specifically around the Carousel Mall and the community benefits agreement. So this past, I believe it was like September, we had a press conference because the council, this also like really depends on how things are moving in the council. And so like when they started talking about the Carousel Mall again, we started to again start reactivating. They had been at a hiatus because they couldn't find a developer for that area, but as you know, we're seeing action with the city council. We're trying to also, bring out members to things like our press conference so folks can speak. So this time around, we really just had community leaders from our various organizations, but we're hoping to have a lot more press conferences, a lot more actions at the city council meetings. And so, yeah, just being available. I know they're hard because sometimes they go really late, or that they have closed sessions until 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and that can be difficult. But like that's probably one of the best ways for folks who are in the community to show up for us because and we'll be bringing shirts and posters and everything. But like that's in our plans for this next year, showing up at a lot more council meetings.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I see we have a question from McKay. I apologize. I don't know, but do you want to come off mute and ask the question yourself? If not, I will ask it. I'll let Dick go first. Dick, go right ahead. Dick Bunce.
Okay, yeah, I'm wondering if you're looking into urban agriculture. It can have serve multiple purposes, and we've been chipping away at that in the Pomona area. Uh, what is your experience with urban agriculture? Have you made some attempts there? And I know you said you have a certain amount of land available, and I'm just wondering where that stands.
Yeah, so with land acquisition, as it relates to like specific projects, we are really closely partnering also with the Garcia Center, and they're looking at having some more urban farm. The thing with the Garcia Center is right now currently they're pretty limited to the historical area where the building is at and the lots that's right next to it. Because all of that land, or I guess all of that land and that historical building was donated to them as part of uh I forget who, but somebody had passed away and get donated that land for $1. And so that's how they got into taking care of that historic building. But the thing is that the land around it had not been a part of that deal. And so they were not able to expand the urban part of their farming as well. So that's kind of been to the extent of our participation in that. What we hope to do with the land acquisition, currently don't have any parcels. We are working with Somos, who is a law group that can help us build the structure so that we can legally put bids on these like empty lots. In the future, what we'd like to do once we have a few underneath our portfolio, a lot of these are just going to be empty lots. Tapping into our partners like Garcia Center, and seeing if they would like to expand in some of the areas that we would potentially acquire. The good thing is that we have good relationships with, the Garcia Center, but also, we have relationships with some of the local real estate agencies like Relicor as well. David Freeman has been, he has been very active in some of these city council meetings, talking about the need to change and to the need to change redevelopment. And so like working potentially with him to see what kind of parcels we could get at a very lower discounted rate would be amazing. And like I said, we are working with Somos Law Group, so they are able to kind of really build out different areas that we can potentially acquire that could serve that purpose. But as of right now, we personally don't do, we don't participate in that, but the Garcia Center does.
Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up to that because Kay had a similar question. Where would the funds come for the acquisition of that land?
Yeah. So luckily we have another 3 years in our grant cycle as well. So we are making reserves for not only us continuing to work with Somos Law Group, but also reserving some funds for potentially the purchase of that land. And we haven't stopped fundraising. So we're still actually putting in grants. We were lucky enough to be invited as a part of our main philanthropic sponsor, James Irvine Foundation. They put on these things called funder roundtable talks or like Funder Alliance presentations where we're able to go and kind of pitch what we're doing and see if we get funded that way. I believe this was the first year that they started doing that. And so we were able to make a lot of connections that way and kind of share out our plan to a wider audience. And we also took them on a tour of San Bernardino and showed them points of interest, the Carousel Mall, the Garcia Center, some of the art galleries downtown, the little art gallery. And that way they were able to kind of like put a face, put a name, put a place to where these investments are going. And luckily we're able to get around $200,000 from just that event alone, where we're really saving that money for for the rainy day of when we can purchase plots of land. So we're just we just keep grinding, we just keep putting out these grants, and if it comes with restrictions, we use it appropriately, but we're really just kind of like saving what we can to be able to make purchases like that in the future.
That's awesome. Thank you. Any other questions from someone who hasn't gone yet? Didicus, go for it.
So Carolina, I put a link in the chat for you. A group in Portland has been building what they call eco villages. It's different than the eco village I worked on in Los Angeles, but it's still a great concept. A relatively small amount of land. I think they built 2 of them, each one on about an acre of land. That's tremendous. It's to find an acre of land in the Bay Area where I'm at, good luck.
Yeah.
But in San Bernardino, I suspect that you have a much better chance of finding that size parcels, or you can assemble something. And they came up with a lot of great ideas on how to do that and how to get started. I was impressed that they weren't telling us, hey, after you get your first $1 billion, here's what you can do to succeed. And I'm like, if I have $1 billion, what do I need you for? But these people were, like, okay, so you're out on the street, you have a backpack with a sandwich in it, and that's all you have in your life. Here's what you can do next to get off the street and to do something, getting your life back together and getting your community back together. Basically, what they did is they found a couple. They're a retired couple that have been investing essentially their retirement fund into communities, and they've built a couple of these across the country. So it might be good to figure out what Portland has done and contact them, see if these people are interested in San Bernardino, or can give you at least some headway on that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We've actually been thinking about going up there. We have been to the Bay Area under the California Community Land Trust Conference, and we're able
Okay.
to
Sorry, I missed you.
oh, really? Really? I don't know if we didn't go this year when it was in Los
Oh, no
Angeles.
wonder you tell me that.
We went to Oakland.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, we're looking at a
That's
lot of alternative models. Like I said, COPE, they do civic engagement, but a lot of their organizers work directly with unhoused folks, and they're always, 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 pushing the need for us to focus on housing and alternative housing models. And Time for Change as well. They're more of a, I guess, more traditional housing model because they own duplexes and quadruplexes for women reentering because they need a bigger space for their family and their kids.
okay.
But it's really interesting I'll be sure to check it out because I'm always open to learning more about what other people are doing.
Yeah, because what they did is, besides opening up a piece of land, is that they gathered a group of parcels, and then they started building a village as opposed to a subdivision. Subdivisions are sterile and they're a dead end road. Even though people say no, we have to have housing first. You need housing. That's without a doubt. People can't be sitting out, especially these days with this weather, out in the elements. But if that's all you have, then all you've done is create prisons or cages. You need to have a more organized and comprehensive look on things. That's why I suggest that you talk to these guys, because that's exactly what they did.
Dinnicus, I'm going to turn it over to Ed.
Yes, please.
Hi, Ed. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, yeah, thanks for hosting. Hi, Ed Braxton, with United Way of Greater Los Angeles. Just for like brief context. So I'm the program officer on the strategic investments team at United Way and help manage a lot of our kind of grants work. And one of the big initiatives that we've been working on, we refer to as a prosperity fund. And basically the main idea is to resource and support and build a network of organizations that are advancing, I guess you could say, approaches to alternative economic development. And that could look like a lot of things. But one thing, and kind of from the funder's perspective, in a sense, that I'm particularly interested in is this idea of like collaborative in managing and building and growing collaboratives. It's important for any number of reasons, but I'm particularly interested in your experience, Carolina, in terms of like what the kind of day to day or month to month like of that looks like, or things that you might have learned that are particularly noteworthy from kind of being immersed in that, over the past couple or few years. Is there any kind of like governance approach, or is it pretty loose? Or yeah, just curious.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been working here for 3 years, and I started kind of at the tail, like then I guess in early 2021, so it was still or 2022, where it was still not, the structure of work had really changed because of COVID, and I was kind of I was exiting one remote role and transferring to another remote role as well. And so that became very challenging because I think even in our own organizations, COVID brought up a lot of different issues within, like even nonprofit social justice, organizations as well. And so there was kind of a bit of a reckoning with that as well. I'll say it's always there's always learning to do. We did do a governance structure. We did have an MOU with kind of clearly outlined roles and things like that. But there are just some things you really can't like predict. whether that be like inter-organizational issues like within one organization itself, or how one org relates to the staff, how some of the staff within each of the organizational collaborative members relate to each other. I think things are a lot of things can kind of go awry, and like relationships can, be maintained and managed, but sometimes they can't. And so we've ended up dealing with, organizations leaving the collaborative as well, but as well on the same side, we've been dealing with organizations wanting to join with us as well. So it's really it is a delicate balancing act, I would say. Like for me, we're really or I guess I'm really trying to put more of an effort on meeting organizations where they're at, and focusing on kind of what can we do together. I would say like when I first started, it was pretty difficult to get everyone together, even on a Zoom, because people don't know the technology quite yet, or like we're trying to find alternative ways to do work with a Miro board or like sticky notes, or we're trying to do things right, like trying to mimic what we would do in person, but it doesn't really always meet the mark. And I think for a long time, I guess probably even my first year, people were very frustrated and like like having to learn new tech. Like a lot of folks don't like using a Google Drive. Like they're like, I want it in front of me, or like I want it in my file cabinet, or I want it this way or that way. So I think just learning what works for each organization was really pivotal, but also took a lot of time. I think some of the organizations also, want to do a lot of work and want to go and want to like, just jump in and say yes, but it's really hard to do when other organizations aren't like that. And it's a matter of like, yeah, you're taking a step forward without everyone in sync would just topple the whole thing over. And even though it does take months to kind of get everyone on the same page, from me checking in with folks, from checking in with their staff, from working through it in our committee spaces, like that takes a lot of time. And having that governance structure, like I mentioned, like in the overall goal, like as an overall MOU, but then also in the committee spaces, coming up with your own kind of rules of engagement. Like in every space, there has to be that. There has to be those set. Like, because if we just put it in the organization's like MOU, like, hey, as a part of this organization, like as a part of this collaborative, you have to, do this or that. That's all and great. But when the staff show up, when the organizers show up to the committee spaces, they're not sometimes they're not privy to that information. Like either the ED doesn't share that with them, or like, we feel like they will get the information, but they don't. So I think having the levels of like governance structure in every space of that the collaborative is going to be in, like being willing to change things when things aren't working. Um, Also checking in with people every day. Like I get texts, like multiple texts a day. We have meetings every week. We call to do check-ins with the executive directors. Like all that is really important towards the maintaining of those relationships. And then just being honest, like if things aren't working for a certain organization, it's not, we need to, have those difficult but very needed conversations.
Yeah,
Okay.
none of us have ever experienced anything that you talked about.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Okay, I know I'm gonna mess up your first name, so Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Arend.
Aaron, I
Uh,
know, but if I choose that one, then I'll say the other one, and then
oh,
you know how it is. So
either way. Yeah. Thank you for your presentation. Really interesting stuff. It was interesting hearing what you were just saying about the challenges of working and managing different organizations.
Yeah.
And I was kind of curious when it comes to forming new relationships, there's a new organization you're considering. I'm curious what are some of like your like litmus tests or some of the things you look for and like what makes like a good organization to partner with.
Yeah, I mean, number one, they would have to focus in the city of San Bernardino, like because we are really that's number one. The focus has to be there. Just that because that's our mission. But I would say another kind of I don't even know if it's like a requirement, but just knowing that they're at the same level of commitment as us as well. All of the inquiries that we've gotten from organizations who reached out to us, we had already been working with in some way or another. So they're not, we're so very familiar with them. We see them on like out at like events, or we see them at the council meetings. Like they're on the same, they're kind of strategizing similarly to us. They have connections with the council members. They are showing up to the council meetings as well. Like they know about what's going on, or they're also part of these like statewide regional efforts like SURF and things like that. Like, well, not SURF, I think it's called California Jobs First now. But we see them around, and so that kind of makes it easier to kind of work with them. I'll say right now, like we haven't really looked into reaching out quite yet. We're still working through a sustainability plan where we can see, how many, or if it's only one organization that we can fill back in. But we really need to do a sustainability plan because although we got funded for 3 more years, it's not at the same level as from our first grant previous to that. So it is kind of like, again, like a balancing act. Like if we want to have some funds for purchasing land, well, we can't like maybe fully partner with the organization how we wish we could. So even like looking at different levels of partnerships, it is a kind of a solution that we're looking at as well. But again, like, yeah, definitely have to be working in San Bernardino, or you want to focus into San Bernardino, have a base in San Bernardino, and be someone we're familiar with, like someone we already see out.
Beautiful. Elizabeth, would you like to?
Yeah, I was wondering, do you have worked with the county or the city on establishing community well-being indicators to show like what would success look like? What are we aiming for? And what's needed to get there?
Yeah, so we do meet with the county here and there, but we mostly kind of focus with our city connection. So, and it's been a kind of a crazy year for a city manager position. So we've been cycling through city managers like crazy, and it's really difficult for us to form a relationship with them. But we kind of just have relationships with who we can, who is there, who is showing up to the job. So no, we haven't looked at these community well-being indicators. I'm aware of a program that the Inland Empire Community Foundation is really trying to get people on. That kind of is similar to the well-being indicators. But it's kind of I forget, I don't even remember what it's called. It's like but it's very similar to this about like what are the basic needs of the community to be successful. Um, we go to their policy forum every year, and we learn about like these new kind of like ways to to unify the work in the Inland Empire, or to get everyone in the same kind of like working towards the same way. But I feel like for us as just San Bernardino, we're already really looking at those community well-being indicators as it stands with the People's Plan. So although it would be great to have like, how much more we would want the medium household income to be. The way that we're kind of moving in our direction is more about like, can we get community involved in these different like developments? Like, can we have a community benefit agreement? Can we have a community advisory board at the CTE level? So that's, there is an advisory board that meets once a year right now for the school board for the CTE pathways, but can we have a board made up of community members or parents or students? Can we have, the infrastructure relate directly to some of these reports that we're hearing from the community? So for example, like, we're doing, continuing research. Like for example, PSIDGE, they'll go on infrastructure walks with the community and point out what's needed. So our measures of success would be like, if we were to be able to get any of those recommendations passed as as part of the renovations to the new additions to the infrastructure, like a truck route or something like that. So although it is working to create a people's economy, we're looking at economy towards like what do community members get as well, like not just what do they input to the economy, but what do they receive as a part of that.
Well, were you involved in the airport expansion and fighting that back because of the unjust practices? And I thought that was a great example of grassroots activism that really mobilized to show it's not just about economic impact. That's important, but it can't come at the expense of marginalized people or having crappy jobs. So kudos to that work.
Yeah, I believe that's San Bernardino Airport Communities, and People's Collective for Environmental Justice is in there. Warehouse Workers Resource Center is also part of that. It's like a coalition in a collaborative, like, we're still, as Justice Be, a part of that as well. And so we're, especially Miriam was a part of creating that community barbecue where we had like over 300 people show up, and they actively had a voice in creating solutions, and we were informing them about what's going on around the airport. So yeah, the big thanks to like WWRC, PSAGE, and Miriam and all the other folks that were a part of that. They were really spearheading that initiative.
So, Carolina, one thing that we haven't talked a lot about, but I thought was really unique about your program versus other ones that I've seen around the country, is the focus on arts and including arts in this work. Would you just share a little more about how you're doing it and why that felt important to this process?
Yeah, I mean, San Bernardino is full of artists, like poets, muralists. There's several art galleries downtown. The Garcia Center, like I said, who we kind of regularly partner with and where Arts Connection is kind of headquartered, also offers a lot of arts and ceramics classes there. Really, a lot of the folks who are the most active in the community are artists. And it would kind of be a disservice for us to not really like put them at the forefront and center. So we, naturally, like as we were pushing the survey, a lot of the first folks who signed up and completed the survey were the local artists in the downtown area, or friends of their friends, or people who would go to their events. And so like naturally this kind of theme of arts kind of came about and kind of emerged in the report. And like I said, Arts Connection is headquartered in the Garcia Center, which is a hub like for arts. Like they have their own arts programming as well, kind of separate to Arts Connection. And it's a great way to get the community out. Like it is one of the things that is family friendly, fun to do. It combines activism as well, because there's a lot of screen printers as well, and so they can make posters. And so like the focus has really come out from the community, right? And like I said, they are some of the most vocal people as well as that are like really supporting us. And they themselves as artists want to see that kind of thrive, and like arts entrepreneurship, it is thriving in San Bernardino, I'll say. Like, there are many art businesses there. But they want to see that really be at the forefront too, as part of anything that we do. And really we do bake it into a lot of the things we do, whether that is like having screen printing, like having some sort of muralist come or beautify the Inland Congregations United for Change office, drawing murals there. So really it is what makes it not only like inviting, but like understandable on a deeper level, like some of the change that we're trying to do. And it's a great way to like get folks out. Like I think I mentioned before that we were trying to get more folks out to these city council meetings. And one great way to do that is to have like a poster making session beforehand, where we do a little art, and then the next day you can bring your art to the council meeting. Take off the handle though, because apparently that wooden paint stir is considered a weapon in there. But like it's fun to do that, and it's a great way to engage folks to come out for that. and art is a very valid form of like um entrepreneurship as well. And so really it came about from like are those artists kind of sharing that feedback in their surveys and their community profiles.
Thank you. That's awesome. So is there anyone who hasn't asked a question yet who'd like to do so? And if your camera's off and you want to ask, if you don't mind turning it on, that'd be great. Okay, well, we'll go for people who have already asked a question that have another one. If not, I have more. So
I have one more question.
sure, Ed, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Um, I guess I'm curious too, just like from, again, from the funder's perspective, it sounds like you kind of had, this kind of 2-year period with some associated funding to do a lot of the kind of work to get the information and understand like what the picture was of the various things that you were working to address. And then there's this kind of second part, the 3-year funding timeline where you're kind of now moving forward with some of those things in phases, I guess. Um, did that funding or does that funding kind of structure or arrangement seem to be supportive or lend itself to moving at the pace that you need to be, or whether that be like a slow pace or a fast pace?
Yeah.
Are there any other kind of just takeaways or reflections that you have from the relationship with funders more generally that could be supportive of this kind of work?
Yeah. I'll say we're very lucky to have that 3-year cycle, because then we're not kind of like always looking towards, writing the grant or like writing grant reports. I will say though that the nature of collaborative work, especially with aid collaboratives, it can be pretty difficult to like get all of that moving and the momentum going in some way. And then I feel like once we're in a good groove, like then again comes like us having to reapply or look at other sources of funding. So I do wish it was a little bit longer, like maybe 5 years. But I already know that we're very, very extremely lucky to have the 3 years as well. Um, and I think you mentioned earlier, but like collaborative funding is kind of relatively like I think maybe in the IE, it's like funders are really looking to kind of do a more holistic change. And so like, it is something that they want to do. I don't know if there are that many like cases of that happening and learnings from those collaboratives to be applied in like these funding cycles quite yet, so I do believe it's like a two-way learning thing, right? Like they want to learn what a collaborative funding structure, like if given in a 3-year cycle, could do, but we also have feedback for them to make it better, right? So again, we're in this like kind of still like new beginning stage in the IE where like collaborative funding is really kind of taking the forefront. California Jobs First, which was like SURF, that was also new from the state. That was kind of requiring different organizations to work together in like labor and like um small businesses and native tribes. So like this idea of funding in a collaborative is kind of emerging in the IE, but yeah, like we're learning things too about working together and like what that actually takes. For Just San Bernardino, like although we did get funded for the 3 years, and we were using that time to really look back at the people's plan, like prioritizing what can we do, what's something that's we can advocate for at the city council, really divvying up that work. At that same time, a lot of the organizations in the collaborative were staffing up post-COVID, training up their leaders, getting the community more involved, learning new technologies, like so things like that, like take time, and that's why I say like it would be, maybe an interesting thing to look at if these grant cycles could kind of go in a little bit longer, just because of the nature of a collaborative work. It's not just one org saying like we're doing this and everyone is going to be, moving forward this way. There needs to be a lot of room for conversation and facilitation and training of these aid organizations. So, although, yeah, just to wrap it up, I think, we're incredibly lucky to have the 3-year window. I do think, they could lend themselves to learn a little bit more about, what it actually takes in those 3 years.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love that conversation. And I'm going to go back to something I said at the top of the call for those who joined a little bit after that. We're looking at what other topics people would like to learn about. And I think funding for collaborative efforts would be a great learning session to invite in a funder at some point and then really explore the different things they're looking or finding out more about where other opportunities are. And also just thank you again, Carolina, and for everyone for asking the questions and showing up today. Before I ask the last question, just a couple quick plugs. We've got an event on building an ecosystem locally for co-ops to thrive. And then in March, one on converting existing businesses to employee-owned businesses, and a whole bunch of other events, a book club, connection events, university professors event. So check out our events page or sign up if those of you who are new today can sign up for it. So Carolina, you brought up surf, and which is now California Jobs First. Here in Los Angeles, it is a very big, gigantic enterprise run by LA EDC, and I've heard about it in some of the other bioregions around the state. I'm wondering if you would just share in 2 or 3 minutes what it's looked like and has it been helpful, or is it, I'll just add that here it's so big and cumbersome that it's really difficult to keep up and participate in a meaningful way for me and maybe some of the other organizations I've reached out to. I'm curious if you're having similar situation for yourself and in your region. So
Yeah, so we're actually combining the two largest counties for surf. So Riverside County, a little bit of Imperial, and San Bernardino County, which all touch the border. And so it's just a large area geographically with so many different pockets of neighborhoods. Like Big Bear is not the same as Yucaipa, it's not the same as Palm Springs, it's not the same as San Bernardino is not the same as Rancho Cucamonga. So I found that as well, like it and that's what I've been hearing too. I've been at the table since its inception. Like I've been part of those conversations. And you know, like it's such a large area that it's hard to really engage in a way that you feel like is actually moving things towards. It's very cumbersome. It's very it is a huge area to cover. And I will say, like, the co-conveners have been doing an excellent job of trying to keep everything together and move things forward. But inevitably with such a big region comes so many different needs and so many different projects that get floated to us, that it does feel like a huge part of the work. Like when it comes to getting projects voted on, it takes a large amount of time, almost like really taking away some of the, I'm doing that on my weekends. And so yeah, I do see how it can be very cumbersome. Like I do ultimately believe that this was meant to be a different way to invest in the economy, but I don't think that they understood exactly how to break it up in a way that made people engage with it. Combining the two biggest counties was maybe not the best idea. Like maybe it should have been a little bit more like narrowed down. Like that would have been great. But again, like it could have been very rushed as well. Like I see how
yeah,
that wasn't really thought of.
yeah,
But we're still gonna keep engaging until it becomes like a little bit too much, but I'm happy to be there still. Like I
yeah.
think it
And
can
have
still
you
be a lot of
have you
progress.
seen any organizations actually receive funding from it yet? Or
Yeah. So
okay,
we did do one round of applications for different projects. That was earlier last year. I think it must have been done like I don't even like September or something like that. So there's a lot of time in between application cycles, which I think is good. But again, every cycle we're getting more and more applications. I'm a little bit scared for what the third round of applications is going to look like. The number is already so high.
Mm.
So again, like, and everyone's learning too. Like, the co-conveners didn't get a manual from the state about how to co-convene, like governance, and the entire structure was really left up to them. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to give grace and participate and give myself grace too. Like,
Sure.
it's a lot. It's a lot of projects to review, but until until I'm committed to being there till the end. So round
That's
three, I
awesome.
don't know when that's gonna happen, but yeah, that will be the last round.
Thank you so much for today. Just encourage everyone to give Carolina a round of applause or a dance, whatever form of appreciation. Thank you so much for your time today and digging into these challenging questions and just the general demeanor and grace that you present with is so helpful. And I'm sure that you're giving that to all the organizations that are collaborating with you. And that's so important to creating a healthy society. So really appreciate it and hopefully we'll see you again.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the questions.
Thank you, everyone.